Mr. Danielson will be filming us today. So thank you for being here, Bruce.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I'm thinking. Thank you, Councilor Starr. Mark, I don't like this one.
First reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending Chapter 57, Garbage and Recycling, Subchapter Commercial Haulers of the Code of Ordinances of the city pertaining to insurance and financial assurance requirements.
Diane?
Good evening. My name is Diane Best, and I'm appearing on behalf of the Public Works Department. This particular ordinance involves two items pertaining to risk associated with garbage haulers. First off, insurance. The insurance requirement would just bring the insurance up to date and make it consistent with other insurance coverages required across the city, both for its contractors and for other licensees. That's, to my knowledge, not a very controversial item because most of the haulers, if not all of the haulers, already carry all these types of insurance. Also, I'm here to talk to you about the financial assurance requirement, which, as you know, has some objection, but I'll try to be concise regarding this proposal. The tools for landfill collection include communications with our customers, the haulers, and we do communicate frequently, and we have communicated several times with them concerning these proposed ordinances. We also communicate with them regarding billing practices. Another tool is to manage collections when they get past due. We need to get a hold of them and talk to them and get the money collected. But of course, an important tool is good ordinances. And at the present time, we do have a good ordinance that provides that once haulers are invoiced, and if they're past due 60 days on that invoice, that they can no longer maintain a charge account at the landfill. So that's already in city ordinance. What we're here for today is the 90-day gap. Charges are incurred for up to 60 days, and then charges are incurred for up to 30 days. They're invoiced, and then for 60 days after that, they can be past due before the charge account is actually stopped at the landfill. So there's a 90-day gap. The proposal would provide for financial assurance in the form of a bond, escrow, or letter of credit. The amounts would be $5,000, which, by the way, costs about $100 or $200 for that bond for $5,000, not $1,500, as you've heard here or has been reported in the media. So $5,000 on the low end, or 3 months average charges, whichever is greater. And as you're aware, that would be varying amounts for the varying haulers. These three types of financial assurance are similar to the financial assurance that is required for developers. Developers guarantee when they complete a subdivision that they will complete the streets, the curb and gutter, the lighting, and other public improvements in the developments. If they have to post a bond, letter of credit, or escrow guaranteeing they will complete those improvements. If they don't, the city engineer has authority to go ahead and collect from the bond, letter of credit, or escrow. Also, the city has other bond requirements for liquid waste haulers, which is a $25,000 bond, and that includes also, as part of that includes a payment of city fees. Residential contractors, an individual residential contractor in the city, even if they build one house, has to post a $20,000 bond with the city. And as part of that includes payment of fees, including landfill fees. So bonds this is nothing new here, it's just that the charge accounts here are bigger and they have not been required before. Now, having said all this, all the haulers have charge accounts. If they choose not to maintain a charge account at the landfill, that's their business. They do not have to then file any financial assurance. They can pay as they go. As indicated, this is to provide for that 90 days coverage. Today, all the haulers, as of today and this month, all haulers have paid their invoices within the 60 days. Now, what do I mean by that? Are they current? What I mean is some are between 30 and 60 days past due, which means they have the 30 days accrued invoice, 30 days past due on the invoice, and they're between 30 and 60. Some run up to 60 days more frequently than others. That's undeniable. But again, the city is, when they get to that 60 days, requiring them to pay cash only at the landfill, and that tool is already in place. There are, in response to this particular issue and questions raised during the informational last week, there are 14 different haulers that have been at the 30-day mark at least once in the past 3 years. So that's the 30 to 60 day. They've been at least the 30 days, and then they've paid the finance charges accordingly and been subject to collections efforts. In the past 12 months, at least 3 haulers have received notices that they will be converted to cash at the landfill. There, 2 years ago, there were 5 haulers that were more than 90 days past due, and that resulted in fairly aggressive collection efforts. And as you're aware, one of those did result in court action, and we are working aggressively to prevent that kind of slippage again. And this is not in reaction or punishment to the kind of issue that occurred before that resulted in court action. It's in response to reviewing the practices at the landfill and determining that it's prudent to avoid that 90 days risk. Now, I know there were questions before about the bond premium fees, so I'll just go into that real briefly. The price of a bond is generally 2% if a purchaser has good credit. So the premium on the minimum bond, $100 to $200, that's a minimum premium for a small bond of $5,000. The 3-month bond, I was searching for a way to characterize this, to explain it to the council without explaining how much each hauler would have to pay or disgorging any information on their market share. But bottom line, the total fees charged to haulers in a 3-month period at the landfill is $1.8 million. Okay, so that's the city's risk. Now, when you consider there should be 52,000 accounts in Sioux Falls, there are 52,000 utility billing accounts. So just for purposes of characterizing this, it's assumed there are 52,000 landfill customers for these haulers, okay? And as a rough estimate, there are at least another 4,000 accounts in the remainder of the 5-county area. And by these accounts, I mean all customers of these various haulers. So a modest estimate of the haulers' total number of counts is 56,000 accounts, okay? So they're servicing 56,000 accounts or more, and they have charges over a 3-month period of $1.8 million. 2% of that $1.8 million is $36,000. So $36,000 premium, basically, to be shared among all of the haulers based on each of the haulers' proportion of their doing business. The bond costs, if applied to each of those 56,000 accounts evenly, if the haulers choose to increase their rates to pay for a bond, would be 64 cents per year. 64 cents per year per customer of the hauler, if they choose to increase their rates, and if they choose to purchase a bond. As indicated, they could also do, again, irrevocable letter of credit, or they could do an escrow account, or they could pay as you go. So that's basically designed just to answer that piece about what it costs for a bond and what our total risk is. So again, we are asking you to set a second reading for this matter at the same time as the prior two items.
Councilor Silberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Diane. That's a lot of numbers to chew on. Now, were these alternatives, were they brought about as a result of a study as well? Like the past two issues we talked about, other communities were doing this?
We did look at what other communities are doing, and we found that there was a wide variety within various communities. A number of communities provide their own municipal solid waste service. So it would, when you start looking at our local area, you don't run into a lot of information on it. I can tell you that Peer, which of course is much smaller, requires financial assurance for $5,000 minimum or 4 months estimated fees. And then Fargo provides its own service. Some of the other smaller communities would just charge a straight $5,000 bond. Norfolk, Nebraska, for example, Litchfield, Minnesota charges a $20,000 bond. So they require specific to bonds. So then we went and looked across the country at some other ideas of ways to handle the financial assurance. And one way that's done in several municipalities is to basically provide 30 days credit. If the bill isn't paid, they never receive, they're never extended credit again. So it's a one-shot, one-chance deal. We looked at one city in Connecticut. It requires either pay-as-you-go accounts or bond, letter of credit, cash, cashier's check for 2 months waste charges. And it all depends on what their collection practices are. Another one requires 2 months tipping fee, cash deposit, or a bond. So those are the kinds of things, but the smaller the bond is, the shorter the period until you actually would close their charge account.
That was kind of my question. How many different alternatives were there out there? Because, I mean, how extensive has the lack of pay been in this industry with our city? Has it been a chronic problem from?
What I can tell you is that during the 2-year period, we have had 5 haulers that were more than 90 days past due. 1 resulted in court action, as you're aware. The others did work out compliance plans, and they paid those past due amounts. So we've had good ultimate collection practices. We're working fairly aggressive in order to get those accounts down. As far as the total losses incurred by the city previous to the last 2 years, I don't have an answer for that.
Okay. Okay, because the only thing, like, it's just kind of hard to argue with some of these I'm sorry, can
No,
I say
it's
one
all
more
right,
thing? It's hard to argue, you know, with some of the point of view of these gentlemen and businessmen who are here and have been good customers for years. You know, if I'm looking at it from a personal point of view, if I'm a member with American Express, and I've been spending a pretty good amount of money with them for years and have terrific credit, and about 7 years down the road, all of a sudden I get a notice that next year to continue doing business with them, I give them $5,000. I know it's not apples to apples, but it's just, I guess that's just kind of why I'm asking what alternatives we looked at. It's hard to kind of listen to their story and argue with that. Right. So
what I would look at is the fact that for years they ran charge accounts without providing any guarantee deposit letter of credit and so forth, and the city was very lucky. But the time to get the letter of credit, the escrow or the bond in place is the time when the companies are able to provide that. And so we wouldn't want to say, we have no problem now, let's revisit this in 3 years. And by then, we've already seen 3 years of somebody was bought out by a parent company or by another company and they defaulted, or somebody else went bankrupt. Let's avoid these issues before they occur.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I'm thinking. Thank you, Counselor Starr. Mark, I don't like this one. Counselor Starr.
Diane, when I'm taking a look at the proposed ordinance, I guess I'm just a little bit confused about the proof of insurance part that we're striking from the current ordinance and what we're trying to accomplish. When we took out we're just saying that they have to show proof of insurance, and then
Right.
we're taking out all the requirements of what that proof would entail.
Right. As it currently sits, there are 2 insurance provisions that apply to under this same Chapter 57 on waste. And one provision refers to greater insurance than the other provision. The one that has the greater insurance applies to medical waste, transfer stations, and recycling facilities. Sure. Those 3 entities had a greater insurance requirement than actually the municipal solid waste and C&D haulers. So what this does is just repeals the one that applies to that applies to municipal solid waste and C&D haulers. Okay. It just repeals it and refers back to the other ordinance. So now you have one ordinance that applies to all of them for insurance. So if we need to update insurance requirements in the future, we'll have one of them. It's uniform.
But it's probably a higher amount so basically for the C&D haulers and for this group, the actual minimums are going to go up of what we're requiring?
There's a greater stated amount of insurance in the ordinance, but the requirements are, like for general liability, it's $1 million per occurrence and $2 million aggregate, which is a very uniform across-the-board requirement for insurance for vendors with the city. And it's, frankly, when you look at, I looked at it at the last licensing cycle, and most, if not all of them, already carried the requisite insurance. And there has been no objection from the haulers.
If I may, then is it different from the requirements that the state, are we at the same level as the state minimum insurance requirements? I know as an individual there are state minimums. Are there state minimums in place? I mean, are we adding an extra layer here that we're asking for a higher limit than what the state would require, or
the state,
as part of doing?
The state doesn't have a commercial general liability minimum for these particular businesses as such. Obviously, auto liability, there has to be coverage, and workers' comp, there has to be coverage, and the cities would be consistent with the state's requirements.
Thank you.
Council Chair Rolfing.
I'm hearing some questions, some more questions and things that are coming up on this, and maybe possible other solutions, that kind of thing. And I'm wondering if it might not be a good idea to take a look at delaying this for another week or two so that we can get some other options on the table and maybe discuss this further with you, Diane, and some of the haulers maybe, and come up with a solution that may look exactly the same or it may look different. But I guess I would like to put off the second reading on this ordinance to, let's see, 17th, the first one in November. How would that be?
Or December.
Yeah, I think we need to take care of that. If we're doing the other two, we probably need to get this done. What's the first week in first meeting in November. I believe it's the 4th. November 1st? Or the 4th?
November 1.
November 1. I would make a motion that we set the hearing and second reading for Tuesday, November 4th at 7 PM here in the City Hall.
November 1st. Second.
November 1st, I'm sorry, yes.
Is there a second?
A second.
Counselor Erickson?
I did second it, but I have a couple questions, because here's my concern, is that we kick the can down the road and they're in limbo again for 3-4 weeks, that if we can bring it back sooner and just get it done with, maybe it's not doing it at all. So my question is I know that there are these credit accounts. So what happens if they are 30 days late and you just say, okay, no more credit account, or we mandate that they have to be on ACH? I know that the software currently does not provide for it out at the landfill, but we've got to figure out something and get with the times to allow ACH. I mean, you can do it with Sioux Falls Utilities, that we've got to come up with a way to get ACH. And so, hey, if you're going to be a hauler, you have to be on ACH, so it automatically comes out. If you default, something triggers to where your license is gone, or there's got to be a different way. I get that you don't want 90 days of risk out there. I get that. And most of these people understand that. I think probably all of them understand that. But these probably aren't the ones that are delinquent either. And so maybe they are, I don't know. So the concerns with that is how can we get them up to date quickly without that 90-day risk and have some sort of trigger point in there as well? I mean, do we charge interest? Do we have late fees? What are we already doing that we can just strengthen without penalizing those that are in good graces already with the city? I think that's the big concern, are the ones that are paying in good graces. So, I mean, yeah, I second it, but I just as soon just remove this and let's just get it gone, and we can bring it up with the haulers in mind again. I'm happy to bring it to Public Services and discuss it there in more detail if need be, to our committee, you know, with the approval of the council. But I say we just vote it down today and start over.
Counselor Erickson, I think that that's just fine. And so we've right now have, Council, there's a couple of options. Thank you. One is Councilor Chair Rolfing talked about delaying this to November 1. Councilor Erickson's not made a motion yet because we have to now vote on this one. But the other one is just don't set a second reading, which would kind of kill it for now. I have to bite my tongue. I know what I would like you to do. I tried to relay that to Councilor Rolfing without telling you what to do. So why don't, Councilor Erickson?
If I can just make a suggestion to my fellow colleagues here, is to vote no on the amendment. We go back to the main motion and we all vote again. We make a motion to move to approve for the second reading, and then we all vote. I would encourage you to vote no.
Very good. Very good. Let's vote on the first one. That was to delay the second reading till November 1st. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Starr,
No.
Staley,
No.
Erickson,
No.
Erpenbach,
No.
Kiley,
No.
Nitzert,
No.
Rolfing,
I'm going to say yes.
Selberg.
No.
Very good.
Mr.
And now,
Mayor, move to approve to set the reading of the ordinance.
Thank you. Second? Is there a second?
And then vote down.
Second, Salberg?
Thank you, Council. Roll call vote, please.
No.
Do we get discussion?
Further
Yeah.
discussion?
Anytime there's a motion, you got to have it.
Okay. As long as it's not repetitive, let's not repeat the same thing that we just heard, because I think we've had plenty of good discussion on it.
Thank you.
Councilor Staley?
Thank you. Well, what I wanted to say is that I think that having something in place where this surety bond I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm saying use that for those companies that have been very delinquent. And then let the other companies continue on the way they have been. Because I've talked with some of these handlers, and I think they really care about doing a good job. And I agree with the sentiments I've heard from my colleagues here that we may not have a problem that needs to be fixed. So thank you.
Very good. It's fairly repetitive comments. Any other things that's unique? Councilor Chair Rolfing.
While I agree with everything that's been said here, my reason for putting a stop date on this of December 1st was we have 2 weeks then to get it done or 3 weeks to get it done, rather than just say, hey, we're going to take care of this somewhere down the line. I worry that that won't get done and that we'll just forget it. That can't happen. So please make sure that you stay on this and we get it done in a reasonable amount of time.
A roll call vote, please. Counselor, okay. Counselor Buck?
You've passed
Sorry.
me over twice
No,
this evening, Mr.
Sorry,
Mayor.
sorry. Counselor Buck? I don't think so, but this is the first time, but thank you. Counselor Buck?
I need to respectfully disagree with Councilor Rolfing because we're at a point where I don't believe that city staff has tried the opportunities that Councilor Erickson has pointed out. We know that we have software that can do far more than what we're using it for. We're not taking the opportunities that we are, and we're just putting the burden on these haulers. And I don't think that we have to be responsible for providing, another date for them, for staff to meet. We can kill this now, and they can bring it back if it's such a big deal, but I think they need to take that opportunity to use the software the way that it will work.
Again, I think that was fairly repetitive. My apologies.
I don't
just-
appreciate your comments on the way that we're
Just
doing
trying
the
to be.
meeting, Mr.
just-
Mayor.
They're repetitive comments. A roll call vote, please.
Just to be clear, Mr. Mayor, this is for Monday, October 17th.
Yes, it's from Monday, October 2nd, 17th to move to a second reading. A no vote would basically kill it, for now. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Starr,
No.
Staley,
No?
Erickson,
No.
Erlenbach,
No.
Kylie,
No.
Neitzer,
No.
Rolfing,
No.
Selberg.
No.
Very good. That is failed, 0-8. Item 9.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I'm thinking. Thank you, Counselor Starr. Mark, I don't like this one. Counselor Starr.
Y'all come back now. Here.
Security, escort this gentleman out, please.
Come on, Soda Pop, let's go.